We kind of have a packed schedule today, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining today's webinar, where we're going to be discussing kind of a year in review as well as what's to come in 2025. So for those who have not met me, I am Maura Gilday. I am the Manager of Economic Development and Digital Equity at the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. I lead our broadband initiative as well as the Central Coast Broadband Consortium, and I'm supported by David Witkowski, our Senior Broadband Advisor. I'll just run through our agenda really quickly because, like I said, this is a webinar today. It is a little bit different from our CCB meetings. I will kind of have to run through our regular CCBC order of business very, very quickly, and then get into our webinar. So I'll start that off with a 2024 recap. Our wins, our challenges, and kind of where we are at as a region, and what's going on at the state and federal levels when it comes to these kind of ongoing projects like the Middle Mile and BEAD. And then we'll kind of get into, the meat and potatoes of today's webinar, which is our panel discussion that focuses on what's to come in 2025 post January. And we're joined today by three amazing panelists. Thank you for coming and being here today. And that will be followed by a pretty short Q&A. It will be about 10 minutes. I'm hoping that we do have a pretty lively discussion. So if we do end up going past the hour, I will be sticking around for about 10 to 15 minutes afterwards if anyone has any, follow-up questions or needs some links or resources. And this meeting is being recorded, and you can find that afterwards at our CCB website's news and events page. So let's get started. I do want to start off by making a quick announcement. The Monterey Bay Economic Partnership is having our holiday mixer this Thursday at 12 p.m. You can register on the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership's news and events page. We will be recognizing two Monterey Bay Economic Partnership and Central Coast Broadband Consortium members. Cruise.io and Comcast will be handing out their public-private partnership awards for 2024. Another reminder is that the CCBC website has been revamped. You can subscribe to our mailing list on our Get Involved page. You can visit centralcoastbroadband.org. This will be super, super helpful for us as we're trying to update our mailing list so we can get a more accurate list of, who wants to stay updated and who wants to learn about our webinars, just like this one. So let's jump into our CCBC updates. As far as CPUC news goes, they have recently started a BEAD subgrantee technical assistance webinar series starting Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Yes, that does include today. So thank you everyone who has come to my webinar, not the CPUC's. Fortunately, they do have recordings of their webinars as well as their presentation slides on their events page, and you can register for future events there. As far as CDT news goes, there are some important meetings coming up. There will be a state digital equity plan implementation and digital equity competitive grant program design briefing on the 16th. They were scheduled to open the digital equity capacity subgrant program last week, and host a webinar on the 11th, but we haven't heard any more news on that. Other than that, there will be a Middle Mile Advisory Council meeting on the 17th, and hopefully we'll hear more about, straight progress on the Middle Mile and not more Middle Mile cuts. And finally, there will be a California Broadband Council meeting on January 24th. And their last meeting kind of focused on a year in review, like a little bit of what we're doing today, but their next one will be about what's to come in 2025, and that'll be a pretty timely discussion since that's occurring on January 24th. So I do want to jump into some quick recaps. If you did attend our last CCBC meeting, I did kind of more of a deep dive on these, but I do think it's important to kind of go over these to contextualize what we'll be talking about today. And I'll start with something that we've accomplished fairly recently, which is securing the commitment of our 3 counties to engage in direct notification. So I know I've talked about this quite a lot, but the California Emerging Technology Fund has been really pushing for this affordability initiative, which is their Get Connected call centers. So anyone can use a county-specific number to sign up or get connected to a caller who will help them learn about affordable internet plans in their area and get them signed up to an affordable plan. And those eligible are those who, are enrolled in CalFresh, Lifeline, and Medi-Cal. These are examples of the postcards and flyers that they're sending out because CETF has learned through their work with the ACP that this is the most effective way to get folks signed up. So thank you, CETF, for all your help in getting that county commitment. I see, Sunny, you're here now with us.
I am. Hi, Mara. That's great to be able to join you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much, Sunny. So a little more info on direct notification. So what we've been doing, or what they've been doing rather, is sending these out via mail or text message directly to these homes. We've already started doing this a bit in Santa Cruz County, where their Human Services Department is sending out these flyers with Medi-Cal resubscription packets. And we've already seen some great data on that. So we're excited, really, really excited to see what we can do with direct notification and Monterey and San Benito counties as well. I also want to highlight our work with Loaves, Fishes, and Computers in light of our 2 grant agreements with them ending in December and January. So in the past year, they have completed 303 digital literacy courses, distributed 550 devices, enrolled 528 residents in digital literacy courses, and helped 400 seniors receive tech support. So thank you also to LFC for all the amazing work in digital equity that you're doing for our region. It's really, really amazing and awesome work that you're getting done. And now we'll move on to infrastructure. So this map shows our CASIF infrastructure and federal funding account project applications in 2023. So you can see that this is pretty spread out throughout our entire region, all throughout Santa Cruz County for our CASIF applications, extending down to northern Monterey County, and then a little bit of San Benito County. Those yellow FFA project application areas are a little bit more dispersed. As you can see there, they kind of connect to that orange line, which was the initial middle mile state plan, which is kind of like a fun little time capsule because we can see all of that where it extended throughout our counties before those 2000 mile cuts. And we'll get into more of that later. But this map shows, an updated version of that, which is where we have received those awards in our region. As you can see here, we've secured nearly $60 million for 5 projects administered by 4 ISPs benefiting 2,325 unserved locations in a population of 8,703. And for CASIF infrastructure, the application guidelines and funding trends really pointed to the CPUC wanting to prioritize these kind of rural areas, these hard to reach areas, and also ISPs that were willing to offer affordable internet service plans to ACP recipients. And in our region, we do see this kind of really nice diversity in that our awardees were smaller local ISPs, which is great for our local businesses. But also the idea being that, more ISPs in the game will increase competition, resulting in better quality service for lower prices for our consumers. And not only that, but their hope was to also kind of spur greater competition when it comes to trying to secure these funds so that those who do get projects funded are really targeting these remaining underserved and hard to reach area priority locations. Um, but yeah, it should be noted that our three counties alone earned a massive portion of last year's CASF infrastructure funding. So out of that statewide pool of 51 million, our region's projects were awarded nearly 90% of that total, which is huge. FFA is a little bit different. We saw a much smaller percentage of total FFA funding that amounted to about 2% of that. I'm not sure why that is the case, whether FFA was much more oversubscribed than CASF infrastructure, or if fewer ISPs in our region went for that versus CASF, or since FFA began to roll out after CASF, they saw all the funds we were getting and decided we were good. David might have a little bit more insight to share on that, but regardless, within 2024 alone, our region has earned about $60 million in broadband infrastructure deployment funding and has done a great job of kind of harnessing those dollars in a really historic era of broadband infrastructure funding that we might not see ever again. And here is the current middle mile map. I did say I would discuss this a little bit further previously, but here you can see which areas are in the pre-construction phase and which are in the installation phase. I do not currently have the comparison map, but I can just point out which areas of that middle mile plan have been cut in our region. So you can see along Highway 9, extending to this county line right here, it kind of connected like a V, extending down to Highway 1 that went up towards like Davenport, extended down along the coast towards Monterey, and then towards these kind of like spur segments right here. Oh, spur segments right there. And there are several implications for these cuts for our region. Number one being that unfortunately, this does prevent the connection of areas that have remained historically underserved, particularly these kind of mountainous areas or hard to reach areas like the San Lorenzo Valley, as well as these coastal areas along Highway 1 like Big Sur. Additionally, another concern that we have is that just as FFA applications or project guidelines prioritize projects that connected to this middle mile, BEAD, which is the federal broadband deployment project, will also prioritize projects that can connect to this. But the concern being that, well, if we can't connect to that, then our ISPs applying for these projects will be severely disadvantaged. So where are we now? Well, just like I mentioned, we do still have infrastructure gaps in rural and hard to reach areas. And it is very difficult to secure funding for those kind of hyper localized projects, like I mentioned, like in the San Lorenzo Valley or in Big Sur. It's also difficult to leverage those middle mile networks for last mile deployment, especially if those middle mile areas are getting cut. Separate from broadband infrastructure deployment, we are also struggling with transitioning to affordable plans post ACP. Not on the whole, though, because as I mentioned, we are collaborating with CETF to do some amazing work in getting these homes connected. But there are remaining gaps in outreach and adoption among covered populations. And these are populations that are, individuals who belong to a racial or ethnic minority, individuals who are English learners, veterans, individuals who are disabled, and aging individuals. So those are the challenges that we have been dealing with in the past year and will continue to deal with. But now that, we're entering a new year and we're seeing a change in administration, there are many, many challenges that we can also anticipate. So for example, we're going to see some change in not just federally, presidential leadership, but also in our federal agencies like the Department of Commerce, the Federal Communications Commission, and the NTIA. And that will definitely have impacts on federal programs like BEAD. More broadly, there will be shifting policies and funding priorities, and we'll have to learn how to maximize these federal and state funding opportunities while enhancing our collaboration and capacity building. So I'll give a couple examples of how we might anticipate some changes. I know that our panelists might get into this a bit more, but a few weeks ago, our incoming Senate Commerce Committee Chairman Ted Cruz sent 2 letters to the Department of Commerce's NTIA, which is responsible for implementing the broadband provisions of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And that created the Internet for All initiative, which was that $65 billion program that was created to ensure that all Americans can access affordable, reliable internet service. And these 2 letters concerned BEAD and the Digital Equity Act. In the letter that he wrote to, or one of the letters that he wrote to the NTIA, he kind of signaled that the president-elect already had some changes in mind when it comes to BEAD, which is, $42.5 billion, and explicitly said that, it's too expensive, and argues that Elon Musk's Starlink, which is a satellite internet company, can do it for much cheaper. And he also said that moving forward, states shouldn't be subject to onerous bureaucratic obstacles imposed by the current administration's NTIA. A separate letter raises concerns about the Digital Equity Competitive Grant Program, and that went live this past summer. And he took issue with the prioritization of covered populations, which I mentioned previously, and specifically using race-based criteria to make funding decisions. Another example of a possible shift is with the FCC. Brendan Carr has been nominated to FCC chair, and his personal perspectives on broadband deployment and funding have been detailed in his piece in the Project 2025 Mandate for Leadership. And in some, he has outlined a desire for deregulation and spending fewer taxpayer dollars. So he recommends a comprehensive review of structural FCC regulations, but also broadband programs themselves. So the argument being that, regulation might block competition, that it increases connectivity and doesn't allow non-legacy providers like Starlink to join the game. And he also argues that, broadband programs themselves like BEAD are inefficient, lack a national strategy, and waste taxpayer dollars. So again, this is all just conjecture until anything actually happens. So we are predicting that these could be anticipated changes, and the impact of those changes might be that deregulation might negatively impact connectivity, especially in areas with less providers where consumers will end up getting slower internet. There may be fewer regulatory actions by the FCC and fewer checks on bigger corporations. And some have pointed out that a similar approach was taken with the electricity industry previously, when some pushed for deregulation in that, but it eventually caused consumers to bear price increases, decrease service reliability, and increase market volatility. All that to say, again, this is all conjecture at this point, but hopefully this is something that our wonderful panelist experts can shed some light on. So let's jump into it. I am joined today by Sunny Wright McPeak, the CEO and president of the California Emerging Technology Fund, James Hackett, the COO of Cruise.io, and David Witkowski, who has all those wonderful responsibilities right there, and who is our senior broadband advisor. So thank you all for joining us today. It is a privilege to have each of you here so you can share your unique insights on what might be happening in 2025. So I'll just have you begin by, introducing yourselves, your organization, and the role that you play in advancing broadband and digital equity. Sunny, you can start.
Okay, thank you so much, Mara. It is a pleasure to join you. You did an excellent job of that overview. I don't think it was conjecture; it was pretty much right on. And it's great to be here with David, who is an expert advisor also to the California Emerging Technology Fund, and again with James with Crucio. The California Emerging Technology Fund was directed to be established by the California Public Utilities Commission out of corporate mergers in 2005, with the assigned mission to close the digital divide in California. Um, it was uh, our first strategy actually was to look at how do we tap into existing leadership structures to leverage the seed capital that was negotiated by the PUC to go into standing up the California Emerging Technology Fund. And therein lies the first thing I want to underscore, and that is there is no substitute for leadership. So having the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, having the partnership sponsor the California or the Central Coast Broadband Consortium that you lead with Tara, it is huge. And every member who belongs to the partnership, everybody who sits at the table with the Broadband Consortium is really essential to this conversation. My hat's off to you. I really enjoyed the summit on November 8th and got to talk with James there. And in your region, you've got actually a huge, you know, actually set of providers across the spectrum. You've got large telcos and cable folks, and then you've got Cruzio, who's been at this for quite a while, and also having Ken Nye and SurfNet and the California Broadband Coalition there is just, these are huge assets to keep going back to. You've been very successful in deployment, and I think part of that turns on how active the consortium has been. So continue to have these conversations. We are also very, very concerned about continuing affordability. Um, we know from the broadband survey that we do periodically, the 2023 Digital Equity Survey that was done then in 2023 with the Department of Technology to inform the state digital equity plan and the BEAD plan, that there is, of all the households unconnected, especially low-income households, 35% plus say the primary reason is because of affordability. Less than 3% say it's because of the lack of infrastructure. Now, to be sure, I just want to underscore CETF for 17 years has been in the column of we need to have ubiquitous high-speed broadband infrastructure everywhere for a variety of reasons, including public safety, including economic development, including support for all of the other infrastructure systems that the internet today is used to regulate and manage. So we want to continue that. We are delighted that as a launch pad at the summit, we've been able to bring together under your leadership all three counties, Monterey, Santa Cruz, San Benito, to do the direct notification on what's available as affordable offers. We at CTF are continuing several strategies to secure affordability. We're working with urging the legislature and the governor the governor's office to include in the 2025-26 budget requirements for affordable offers if a ISP is doing business with the state. We would exempt smaller ISPs. To include if a uh, grantee is receiving a deployment grant from the California Advanced Services Fund for applications submitted in the future, let's say 2026 or 2027, that not only would that company have to have an affordable offer in the area of the project that is subsidized by the California Advanced Services Fund, but also if they're a large provider in all of the service territories throughout California. Lastly, I want to underscore two things for your consideration. The next is we are working with legislators, the governor's office, and stakeholders to try to reach consensus around reform of Lifeline. The California Lifeline program, which today is almost $20 a month of dollars from California consumers collected by ISPs per access line that goes into subsidizing telephony. We want to expand that to include internet service. And while today it's about a $360 million program and consumers pay per access line every month about, well, it's not about, it's exactly $1.11 you'll see on your telephone bill. For your mobile device, for a lifeline or a wireline, excuse me, 44 cents of that is going into the Lifeline program. It could be increased by the PUC. We want to get to internet service. So we're bringing everybody together around that, which has the promise of being ahead of the rest of the nation and maybe insulating our affordable offers to the changes that happen periodically in federal administrations. We hope that there is a federal solution, but in the meantime, we want to focus on this opportunity. And then the California Department of Technology is the entity administering the IIJA capacity grant for digital equity. We presume that that will still get paid, although there could be those changes too. But assuming that that is going to go forward, there's $70.2 million available in California over 5 years. The Department of Technology has out draft guidelines. They're trying to get to the final guidelines, but it provides funding allocated for an application, they hope one application from each county. Doesn't have to be from the county government, but it should certainly confer with the county government, the regional broadband consortia, and all the stakeholders. And for the three counties in the Central Coast, it right now is at about $940 million would be the allocation with one, they're hoping one application per county. I really want to urge. I talked to James at the meeting, talked to you at the summit. We were having the off conversation. Get everybody together, pool the dollars in the three counties, work through the consortium, work with all the stakeholders, and try to see what you can propose back. CETF has actually recommended that the Central Coast get more money than what's been allocated because you have more potential to reach those households who are digitally disadvantaged in terms of the residents in your region. So those are my comments, and I just am delighted to be here with you and the other panel members and everybody who is participating today.
Thank you so much, Sunny. James, David, you have to follow Sunny.
Shall I go, David?
Go ahead.
I'll be brief. Hi, folks. I'm James Haggett, COO of Crusoe Internet. Thanks for having us. Maura and Sunny covered a lot, and really, yeah, just want to add we're an ISP. Our job is to build this stuff. That's what we're in the business of doing. We're very lucky, as Maura said. We've got a bunch of independent ISPs and some bigger ISPs in this region. We've been really successful getting those funds so far. We're all in the process of building that stuff. We've all been building that infrastructure for a long time. And this funding is really going to be helpful to connect more and more people. Our focus at Crusoe has always been connecting everyone in the region. Really, since the beginning of the pandemic times, we've really been focused on connecting the unconnected and providing affordable service through our Equal Access program. We're working with Sunny and Charlene at CETF to get the word out about all of that stuff. And yeah, excited to be here and talk more about what's coming.
And I'm David Witkowski. I'm the founder of Oku Solutions. We're a consulting company based in Santa Cruz County. I do work with a variety of organizations. As Sunny mentioned, I serve on their board of expert advisors. I advise Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. I also work with Joint Venture Silicon Valley, where I head up their civic technologies program. So I tend to sort of act as the local Yenta to go around and matchmake in a lot of cases. Sort of have I have a spoon in every jar of juice, as they like to say. And so right, what we're trying to do right now is read the tea leaves on what's going to happen given changes that are occurring. I'm trying to figure out what's going on, work my network to see what I can learn, hopefully get some early warning on some things that they are coming down the line so that we can prepare for those. So I'm looking forward to talking to the panel and seeing what we can do going into 2025.
Great, thank you so much. Well, I think each of us have kind of covered my first question, which was, what is the most critical barrier to achieving digital equity across the region? And I think we've covered that. So I think I want to get just right into the big question of the day, which is, with a change in administration coming in January, what shifts do you anticipate at the federal level, at the FCC, the NTIA, Department of Commerce, or, not just the structure, but with the broadband funding programs themselves? And how might these changes affect our state level initiatives and priorities in California? Sorry, big question, I know, but the hard hitting
How
ones.
much time do we have?
That's why I wanted to ask it first.
You know what? I want to comment that, Mara, that it could be just huge. There were real dislocations and disconnects the first Trump administration, and even signed contracts were not honored. And companies or CBOs can simply go under if the money isn't flowing even on an existing grant or an existing contract. We're stepping back to look at who our allies are possibly in this whole area, and especially the California delegation. We have 11 members who are of the California delegation who are Republican. 5 of them have been pretty outspoken and supportive of high-speed internet service everywhere as a public safety and economic development strategy. A good example is Jay Obernolte from San Bernardino, also has part of Kern. I saw that Martha Van Royen was here. So, mobilizing that outreach to a Congress member, Obernolte. In the San Joaquin Valley, we've got other legislators that Valadeo who could step in. Absolutely, in Sacramento Valley, we've had good good support there. So these are conversations where, from the business community and organizations such as the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, we need to have Republican voices going to the Republican administration. It's just that clear. We also have, from those Congress members, they could be talking to the red states and the red legislators whose districts got a lot of money from ACP. And I will give you an example. Since CETF was engaged by Pew Charitable Trust to look at enrollment patterns across all 50 states and the territories. We tracked every one of them for both with two parameters. One was the percentage of enrollment against eligible households, and then the increase in enrollment over time for the 2 years essentially that ACP existed. And guess which state was at the top for enrollment of those that were eligible? It was Louisiana. That happens to be where the Fifth District Circuit Court is, and it where they're trying to challenge the Universal Service Fund, by the way, and it's going to go to the Supreme Court. It is where the speaker is from, and so it takes just a little bit of thinking about how do we have the conversations with those who are in the room today. I see that Andres Rodriguez is here from Speaker Rivas. Well, I'm absolutely positive that a speaker, Rivas, it could help in helping us with this kind of strategy, who has knowledge across, our delegation, the red members in the assembly, and we could mobilize. So that's an example of how do we try to survive, and then we show the way in California with true public-private partnerships, because that's in the end, if we're delivering higher speed service to more people and we get more low-income households actually online, that is a future customer base that grows the economic pie for everyone.
Yeah, just to add to that more, I think David and Sunny are probably better qualified than me to read the tea leaves on the funding coming down. But I do think our approach at Crusoe is always look for projects that make sense and then look for funding. So we can all keep doing that as a region, right? We should be looking at where are the areas that need serving, what are the communities that need infrastructure, who do we need to work with, and what partnerships do we need to pull together to serve those communities, and be focused on we're going to serve those communities. If BEAD continues to come down, if the funding continues to come down, then fantastic. If not, then we'll just have to look for other funding means. But the projects are the most important thing, which is what we stay focused on, because we can only have so much control over what's going to happen at the federal level.
And I do want to quickly say, although I was kind of spelling doom with the uncertainty of BEAD, as Rochelle pointed out in our chat, we do still have state funding opportunities that have been laid out in our budget year. So we have the CASF infrastructure coming in, CASF broadband public housing account, not just infrastructure, but digital equity initiatives as well, like the CASF adoption account. So yes, exactly that. We just have to get a little bit more strategic in searching for that funding.
And I want to do a shout out to Rochelle Chong. She is the only person in the entire country, I think, well, and then therefore the world, who's served on both the Federal Communications Commission and the California Public Utilities Commission. And in the interest of full disclosure, she is special counsel to CETF, and we're trying to, in the middle of another proceeding that we're negotiating for public benefits. But it was Rochelle who actually had the brainchild of the California Advanced Services Fund. There is no other state with a CASF, and it's made a huge difference. When I have the opportunity to serve with, on your panel with Steve Lieberman, and there was Arlene Krebs in the audience, you've got Lowe's, fishes, and computers, and I finally am getting those words in the right order. They're as a grantee of the California Advanced Service Fund, the adoption account, are showing exactly how to do that work. And the more performance, the more accomplishment, the better off we are. So again, to LCF and Steve and Arlene and your crew, I think it's really, really helpful. There was a question about San Benito. I want to say that the Community Foundation may be the focus. It may be a service organization such as Rotary, but we, with Supervisor Kuro, who now chairs the board. Mindy Sotelo has been very, very active in this area. Just 2 of the 5. Speaker Rivas is from San Benito County, was on the board for 2 terms. We want to mobilize in San Benito and build the capacity. Even if the capacity isn't there, the way we build capacity is by doing. So let's, under your umbrella, go do it, and we can get more support and grants, as LCF has, from the California Advanced Services Fund adoption account. And then I really wanted to score, particularly where we've got farm worker housing, that's why the broadband public housing account exists. Let's get our share dollars into the Central Coast.
All right, David, it is your time. I want to hear about your tea leaves.
Sonny, you're a tough act to follow. Oh, you've always been a tough act to follow. How long have I known you now? 20, 30 years?
Thank you for not making it longer, David. I think,
We've known each other for a while.
yes, we have.
Yeah, so I find myself rereading Marcus Aurelius and Seneca these days because I'm trying to take a Stoic philosophy on what the future may hold. My hope is that while we can't predict the future and worrying about what's going to come has really no value, we can react to it in proper ways. So my hope is that we will have the strength to react to what comes down the line, and we will make the best of it. You know, I mean, certainly there are potential challenges coming down the road. Maura and I have had long conversations about what may be coming, and she's already touched on some of those. You know, to my knowledge, I just had a call with NTIA this morning, and from what I'm hearing, they're not expecting anything to change in the short term. Of course, there's a lot of speculation, but there's no specific word about what may change. That being said, of course, that could happen. You know, in some ways, I think there's bad potentially coming down the road, and there's also some potential good that's coming down the road. We may get more freedom to use technologies that are appropriate, whereas initially, of course, the idea was fiber for all, which was not reasonable, and we pushed back. MBEP, myself, other groups pushed back, saying let's consider fixed wireless. 5G fixed wireless is becoming a very positive thing. I look at the carriers' annual and quarterly reports, and I see growth in their 5G fixed wireless portfolio. We know T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon are all leaning in that direction. So there could be some positive that comes from shall we say, a more libertarian interpretation of broadband coming down the line. And I think Sonny's point is well taken, which is that if we fold our arms and take an adversarial approach, we can't be part of the conversation. So I think what's important is that we work through the channels that we have and try to figure out ways to work with people who have the ear of the administration and figure out if there are ways for us to cooperatively arrive at a solution that is acceptable to both sides. And I would even argue that we shouldn't even be using the word sides. We should just simply say the goal is broadband, and it doesn't matter whether you have an R or a D after your name, red hat, blue hat, I don't care. I just want to connect people. And so that's always been the approach that I've taken on this. And I would like to see us come together in 2025 to say, let's set aside any partisan leanings that we have, and let's just work the problem.
That's great, David. Thanks. So something that I've been thinking about, and if the NTA is saying, you know, we don't expect things to change, I would love for that to be the case. But I've been, you know, doing some research and seeing some like people foretelling doom and saying, you know, like if certain people take over the FCC, all of this stuff is going to happen, or if certain people take over at the federal level, we won't hear about equity anymore. And I just, as someone who wasn't in the broadband space during the first administration, I want to know, like, do we foresee that happening? Is there any truth to that?
I want to just underscore what David said. We actually don't let anybody have a pass. I don't care what is your registration, right? You should be for broadband. If you're for public safety, economic development, which tends to, not exclusively, but that often is much more of the emphasis for some folks from one party. Or if you're trying to include everybody and tackle poverty and be about equity, which tends to be associated more with another party, you should need everybody needs broadband. It really should be nonpartisan, bipartisan, and that emphasis with a focus on outcomes. Because when we're delivering an economic value that serves everybody's interest, it's really hard to quarrel with. So if we're disciplined, focusing on outcomes, not just the inputs, but the outcomes, that's the way to have the conversation that brings the most people together and the fewest can actually oppose.
That's a great point.
All
James?
right. Well, I know that we kind of discussed this already, but if we can, we only have a few more minutes before we get to our Q&A, and I'll invite, our audience to ask you guys any questions. But I kind of want to close with, in a few sentences, what is your, call for specifically our Central Coast stakeholders and, advancing our broadband access and digital equity goals over the next year?
I'm going to reiterate, get together around the digital equity capacity grant opportunity with all the stakeholders and have a blockbuster application to the Department of Technology.
Yeah, we're focused on that. I think both here and in Silicon Valley, we are looking to do a multi-county effort like you are suggesting for the Central Coast, Sunny. So I've already taken your advice before I heard it. So I would like to see San Mateo and Santa Clara get together on that, and I think it's a good idea for us in the Central Coast. We do better when we are working together. MBEP brings that group together. CCBC brings that group together. We have done the convening. Maura does a fantastic job convening everybody, and I suggest that is what we need to do. Just the more we talk, the more interactive we are, the better we will do. It's evidenced by the amount of investment that came to this area, for the CASF. 90% of the state's CASF investment was in MBEP territory. That's, that says a lot. And I think that puts, I think that everybody, I strongly encourage everybody who is here to remain at the table. If you are not at the table, I suggest that you become part of the group, because we do want to work with you.
Yeah, I'd say a couple of things. Yes, we've already got a lot of funding into this region. And so the first thing for 2025, I'd say, is let's, to some degree, focus on what we've already got. CETF are doing a great job helping with outreach, but I think Crusoe for sure, and I think the other ISPs could use even more assistance in getting people aware of this new resource that's available and new resource that's already being built and the funds we've already got. Crusoe's project, unlike the others, is fixed wireless and by its nature covers a bigger geographical area. So we're very interested in talking. We work with anchor institutions, community groups. We work with Alert Wildfire. We'd be very interested in talking to public agencies, emergency services, community groups in any of the counties that we cover, of how they could leverage the broadband investment that we've got from the state already. Secondly, I'd go back to with the CCBC and MBEP, we have a great forum to bring together all of the resources we've got. We've got very engaged public officials in this region in all of our counties, and we have really engaged and entrepreneurial and imaginative ISPs and providers who can put together solutions. What we need to be looking at is where is the issues, where are the problems, what community groups are speaking out to say we need broadband. Even with funding going ahead, we know from the funding opportunities we've already had and what we've seen of what's ahead, the data of where is served and unserved is, questionable at best. I saw a question in the comments from Karen from the Boulder Creek Business Association, who's extremely active trying to get better broadband up into San Lorenzo Valley. They had the middle mile cut from Highway 9. Large portions of San Lorenzo Valley don't even show as eligible for any of the state or federal funding, and we all know that they have a great need to have more diverse providers up there, more redundancy. So some of these needs don't even show up on the funding maps and are not going to be solved, even best case scenario, by some of these funding opportunities coming up. We need to not be 100% focused on BEAD or any of those others. I think we need to be focused on where's the problem and then fit the solution to the problem rather than looking for, we in the past we've seen ourselves and others look for, well, there's funding available, let's find a project that fits the funding. I think looking at that the other way around is a better way to go. A lot of new technology coming down the pipe, so we're really excited about some of the fixed wireless technologies Crusoe is using. That expands our reach greatly. We're looking at where else we can use that, and so we're happy to speak to anyone, community groups, emergency services, anyone who thinks they can leverage what we've already got funding for, or would be interested in talking to us about what we could do to work with them to bring better broadband to their region, whether it be through grant funding or through some other means.
Great. All right, so you heard it from them, folks. Get together, collaborate. NBUP is a great resource. And yeah, we can help you with all of your CCBC grant application, project management needs. I will open it up for questions now. We have a few minutes left, so if you do have a question, you want to voice it, you can go ahead and raise your hand and unmute, or you can just type your question into the chat.
Looks like there was one question in there, more.
Is it Fernando's question? What is the application coming up for all 3 counties?
No, from Christina
Yeah,
about
question and
San
answer.
Benito.
Because she's talking about that San Benito is also related to southern Santa Cruz, Santa Clara County, and absolutely true. So the geography needs to, you want to work where you can have connections. And so yeah, I think you want to work in both places. That's what I would underscore. With both places being with Santa Clara County, and if there is the application that David talked about, and with the Central Coast.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think trying to do too many counties at the same time would be challenging, but certainly the Central Coast has shared values and shared population types. So from our perspective, in the MBEP region, it makes a ton of sense. And
Totally agree, David. And I want to clarify, I wasn't suggesting that, but when you leave Gilroy and going into San Benito County, you can, on your way to Hollister, you can work with both areas is all I'm really saying. And I want to underscore, James, that you said that you have funding, being able to build off of the projects that are funded now and look at how to optimize that investment is a really important strategy, and making sure that you don't have any obstacles in front of you for deployment. That, that's running interference, if you will. Helping streamline the whole process for approvals and permits is what we originally envisioned that would be a key role for regional broadband consortia.
Sonny, let me ask you a question. And I know because when you and I first met, you were working in the smart grid space. One of the biggest challenges, and I'm going to speak for James here, but I'm also speaking for other ISPs, including the wireless carriers, by the way, getting PG&E to connect things is a challenge. And we can have all of our ducks in a row and have the project going, and getting power for a project may end up being the long pole. What, if anything, can we do in 2025 to bring PG&E to the table so that this is less of an issue? I will say it's never going to be an issue, but can we minimize it?
Ironically, David, last year, of course, it was Crown Castle who took a lead on legislation to point that out, and we're totally supportive of it. Our board has set that as a priority, i.e., having the investor-owned utilities, the IOUs, be at the table. Recently, because CETF has a MOU with the 4 larger IOUs, because we want them to also promote affordability through their care customers. We meet regularly with them, and we had all of them with us talking to President Reynolds of the Public Utilities Commission. And so I think we're going to take that opportunity to talk about this situation that everybody's running into, because you can't do broadband without power, right? You have to have the power access. And there has to be more connecting of dots at the commission level, and we've got to raise that profile. So that is my quick response to you, but it's a real issue.
Yeah. Thank you.
Right, and then we do have one more question in the chat, and it's from Kyle Evans. And granted, everything that we've been doing with Big Sur, this question is very timely. And he asks, for the more remote regions in Monterey County, like Big Sur, is it best to secure funding first or design the system first or approach both concurrently?
I'd say concurrently. I think that I'd go back to my default position is if there's an area of need, then there's a project that needs to be designed, and that project should be put together to be the best project it can be. And then funding, sure, keep an eye on funding as you go, but I still think we should be building projects that make sense and then looking for how they're fundable. If there's a project that makes sense and needs to get built, we should be designing those projects as collaboratively, and then finding the funding.
Yeah.
Amen to James.
Yeah, it's hard to ask for money unless you know what you're asking money for. But at the same time, right, if you're going to do something, you probably ought to have a path to money. And then so I think that's where organizations like MBEP can help, because you sort of bootstrap your way into it. And you got to pull up on the left side and the right side to get your foot in the boot, right?
Possible, maybe even that some of I know that the wording around some of the capacity grant stuff is vague enough that there may be things that could be snuck through there. So potential that pre-design work or some sort of that work, pre-infrastructure build work could be potentially funded. Yeah. Help make things easier, because it's easy to say what I'm saying, but for a larger project especially, it can be a significant investment to design it properly, and then you're stuck if there's no funding.
All right, well, we have hit the top of the hour. It's now 2 p.m. and our webinar is officially concluded. Thank you everyone for your participation and for attending this meeting. I think it was a very, very timely discussion, and I'm glad that we were able to discuss all of this. Thank you again to our panelists for participating. It's been wonderful to hear from all 3 of you. And I know that Sunny, you have another meeting right now, so I will say goodbye. Thank you again.
Thanks for your leadership. Really appreciate it. Thanks everybody for stepping up. You got many offers to come help you. Do not let them get away. They're going to help you
I
come in.
know.
I know. Okay, thank you.
Thanks,
You all.
Sunny. And for everyone else, I will be sticking around for like 10 to 15 more minutes. James, you're free to as well if you'd like. I'm gonna try to tackle these questions in the chat.
I'm gonna have to hop over to another meeting too, I'm afraid, more. But yeah,
No worries. Thanks,
feel
James.
free to follow up. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Bye. See you later this week.
I think Jessica can stop recording at this point.
Oh, yeah, Jessica, you are good to stop recording. Thank you.